As cities began to evolve in America during the 1850s to the 1920s, crime heightened due to the intense population pressure and loose infrastructure. The construction of gangs, the distribution of drugs, stealing, pickpocketing, and murder soon became prevalent in major cities. America witnessed the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. They encountered their first serial killer, known as H. Holmes, and they began to use violence to fight for what was right, such as in the case of the Haymarket Affair. However, as major law enforcement was established and technology was improved, the process of tracking and identifying criminals was forever changed. In 1895, in the town of West Roxbury Village, in the neighborhood of Roslindale, you would most likely find Officer Stillman S. Wakeman patrolling the streets 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
I am a resident of West Roxbury Village, a town about 3 miles outside of Boston, filled with Irish, German, and Italian immigrants. My principal job as a police patrolman is to protect private property, as there is always theft of personal clothing and tools. I've handled over 20 different cases involving larceny, breaking, and entering. Wives usually come to me and report cases of domestic violence and assault, but there's not much I can do. Vandalism and theft are common crimes amongst the teenage boys, and more often than not, I find myself catching them in the act or receiving complaints about them from neighbors.
Officer Stillman S. Wakeman served all classes and was accepted and valued in his community as he grew close relationships with his neighbors through his work. However, he could do little to solve his town's many problems, as his department and police departments across America lacked the adequate tools to solve crimes. Through the establishment of police departments in towns and cities, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 1908 by President Theodore Roosevelt, law enforcers and detectives desperately needed more efficient ways and tools to complete their jobs. On July 1, 1851, the first record of criminal photography began as the San Francisco Committee of Vigilance declared that a photograph of all persons under order or sentence of banishment be taken and preserved. This idea then spread north, for in 1858, in New York City, police departments began creating the Rogues Gallery, a collection of photographs of known criminals to help them identify the guilty. In 1886, New York's Inspector of Police and Chief of Detectives Thomas Burns published photographs of more than 200 criminals along with brief biographies of each in his book, Professional Criminals of America. These photographs soon became known as mugshots, as the word mug was used to relate to the face or mouth, and the word mugger meant thief. Mugshots were a vital advancement for criminal identification, allowing for criminals to be easily recognized, and they kept a record of an individual's criminal background. In 1899, the city of Akron, Ohio, created the first electric wagon as the police wanted a mode of transportation that would include a stretcher, a cage for prisoners, electric headlights, and an alarm. The ending product weighed 5,000 pounds, had a top speed of 18 miles per hour, seated 12, and would last for 30 miles before having to be recharged. These first police vehicles were typically referred to as squad cars, transporting squads of officers to crime scenes more adequately and quickly. This then led for law enforcement to begin utilizing motorcycles in 1911. In 1899, Belgium began training dogs for police work, thus heavily influencing police departments in America to do the same. By 1911, New York had 16 dogs that were used for patrolling in the Long Island residential district. Canines, such as German shepherds, could easily follow the smell of fugitives and chase them by jumping over large obstacles at high speeds. After the telephone was invented by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876, it was quickly adopted by the police to use as a communications device. Police call boxes soon appeared in the streets and towns of cities in 1881, primarily serving as a way for police officers to keep in contact with the police station, but they were also available for the public to use in order to contact help. In 1882, the main system America used to classify individuals was through the Bertillon system. Created by the French anthropologist Alphonse Bertillon, it involved taking the measurements of a person's body parts and recording them on a card. However, the system proved inadequate when two men under the name of Will West had the same exact measurements and possessed striking resemblances. The system worked for keeping records of criminals, but it was not the most reliable. In 1891, Juan Vuittic, an Argentine police official, initiated the fingerprinting of criminals, for he found in the Rojas homicide of 1892 that the mother of 2 murdered sons was proved guilty as their fingerprints were found scattered throughout the crime scene. In 1911, fingerprints became accepted by the U.S. courts as a reliable means of identification and began a regular practice of classification. Through the formation of criminal justice institutions and with new inventions, it became harder for criminals to go unseen, ultimately making cities safer. Police officers were available to citizens in need of help or danger, and the invention of patrol cars and police boxes made them more accessible. The start of the utilization of canines in law enforcement was only just a small beginning. As for today, we see dogs being used commonly in our armed forces and at our airports. Also, without fingerprinting and mugshots, we still would have been basing our verdict off the inaccuracy that comes from an eyewitness. Therefore, although many crimes were prevalent during this time period, as they always are, they were necessary as they provided us with reason to create better systems of criminal identification and criminal justice.